In 1976, my guest braved death to escape the horrors of Cambodia's killing fields, a nightmare that robbed his family, all 15 of them, including his mother, of their lives. His escape from this valley of the shadow of death defies description, and his eventual destination, the White House, seems like an impossible dream, but it happened. The story is true, and tonight you'll meet the man who lived every minute of it. Stay with us. In 1988, Sichan Siv and I met while we were both working on Vice President George H.W. Bush's presidential campaign. My memory records a humble, perpetually optimistic man, no clues of the early pages of his story, a nightmare that stripped him of everything and everyone who mattered. The Cambodia of his early life was under the dark spell of ruthless communist guerrillas, the Khmer Rouge, backed by the Chinese and the North Vietnamese, and armed with a brand of racist communism. They destroyed nearly a quarter of the Cambodian population, slaughtering between 1.5 to 2 million souls with merciless brutality. In 1976, when Cambodia was collapsing, his work with an international relief agency earned him a seat on an evacuation helicopter. But he missed the flight from the U.S. Embassy by 30 minutes. He survived a year of forced labor and escaped in a harrowing 3-day trek to Thailand and eventually Connecticut with $2 to begin his life in America. What happened next defies belief. I can't wait for you to meet my friend, Ambassador Sichan Siv. He's my former boss as well at the White House. Brother, it's great to see you again. Welcome to State of Independence.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Joe.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful to have you on board, and I just cherish the time we spent together working for a great U.S. president, for President George H.W. Bush. You became his friend. Tell me, though, even before you became a friend of President George H.W. Bush, this is a frightening story. I mean, you've told me this to me many times. Weren't you targeted early on because you wore glasses when they were killing people in Cambodia, where you lived? Weren't they targeting people who wore glasses because they looked like intellectuals or something like that?
That's right. They kill anybody who wore glasses because that's a sign of education, meaning you could read, so you were educated. So they kill those who wore glasses. They kill teachers, nurses, government officials, military personnel, anybody who had not been with them during their so-called revolution. And my mother gave me her wedding ring, a bag of rice, and her scarf, and she told me to run. No matter what happens, never give up hope. So hope kept me alive in some of the most dangerous circumstances, brought me through the jungle of Cambodia, all the way to Thailand, to Connecticut, and finally to the White House where I met you.
Yes, I know. Now, so could you see without your glasses back then? I mean, your mother
I could
gave
not,
you...
Joe. That's a good question. Yeah. I stained my eyes all the time, but it was no longer important because I didn't want to see the destruction and the death that the Khmer Rouge created, the havoc that they turned Cambodia into the land of blood and tears, into the killing fields, as you mentioned. So that's why I had an accident when I was driving a truck in September 1975 because I could not see very clearly. It was at night. It was a rainy night, and I was carrying soil to build a road under the Khmer Rouge command, and I couldn't see it. So the truck got off the highway and collapsed on its side and was a little bit damaged. And that created a rule of the Khmer Rouge that you will lose some of the state property. The only sentence was death.
So if you have an accident and you lose property that belongs to they would kill you.
The only solution to correctional law was death penalty. Under the Khmer Rouge, you made a mistake, you are dead. That's why I was so lucky, because I was close to death a few times under the Khmer Rouge, including that truck, because I couldn't see very clearly. But by the grace of God, I was able to escape the death row of the Khmer Rouge and ran through the jungle for 3 days, having nothing to eat, not to drink, and nothing to guide me except the sun, the stars, and the moon. And I was severely wounded when I fell in a booby trap, but I began to limber along until I got to Thailand.
What, you fell into a booby trap?
Yeah, the booby trap is a deep hole full of punchy sticks. They were supposed to catch the unlucky victims at the stomach or the heart. But I'm very tall for a Cambodian, so the sharp bamboo stick hit me in my legs. So I was not killed, but I was severely wounded.
Wow. And you had nobody to tend to your wounds, but you just had to run, I guess.
No, it wasn't until the following morning that I realized I had dry blood all over my legs, but I was able to limp along through the night until I got to Thailand.
Wow. What an amazing story. I mean, how did you feel? So you were supposed to, I mean, all that would have been avoided if you had made that helicopter flight. You were supposed to be on that flight, but you were 30 minutes late and you missed the flight. How did you feel at that point? I mean, you've spoken so eloquently about hope, but it must have felt hopeless the moment. I mean, what happened when you got there and they told you that the flight had left?
You know, this is what you call the fog of war, because so many things was happening so fast in such a very heavy way. I was supposed to meet with the governor of a province trying to feed some 3,000 refugees. And when the U.S. Embassy told me that morning, if they told me a few weeks before that when the time came, I would have only 1 hour to be at the embassy if I wanted to be airlifted out of Cambodia. And that morning they came, they told me that 1 hour at the embassy, and I realized that I had a meeting with the governor of a province where we were helping to feed some 3,000 refugee families. And I thought that I would go to the meeting and maybe I would be able to get to the embassy in time, but I miscalculated the time, the traffic, and so on and so forth. So when I got to the embassy, they told me that the last helicopter had taken off 30 minutes before. And you asked me about the feeling. There was no time to feel anything, Joe, because I was thinking about what's the next step. I didn't want to leave without my mother in the first place anyway, so it was sort of let fate decide. They said the war was over, it's over, so I don't know whether the end of the war would mean peace or continuing fighting. So it was all very fuzzy, but I just let fate decide.
Yeah. Was your mother still alive at that time when you missed the flight?
She was still alive, and I did not know that she was killed until 5 years after I arrived in America. It was not until 1981, when I was in Colombia, that I learned that she, my brother, my sister, and their spouses and their children, 15 of them, were all killed by the Khmer Rouge sometime in May 1975.
Oh, man. Just tragic. It's just, what an amazing story. It's amazing how God is able to move in a person's life, that of all the people in your family, you were the only one spared. And normally you would have been killed because you wore glasses, because you needed glasses to see.
Yeah.
But you managed still, without your glasses, to escape and to make your way without a map. I don't know how you do this, but without a map, you made your way to Thailand. And so when you get to Thailand, you knew that you had crossed the border at some point? I mean, you could tell at least that you, how'd you know?
I did not know where the border was, you know, because it's very fuzzy.
Yeah.
So I just sat there, I was listening to the loudspeaker. They were inviting villagers to a Buddhist ceremony, and they were speaking in Cambodian. I thought I was still in Cambodia. But then why would they speak Cambodian? If they were speaking Cambodian, I must be still in Cambodia. But why they were having a Buddhist ceremony? Because there was no religion under the Khmer Rouge.
Oh, yeah.
So finally I started to walk, and then I met a farmer, and he was startled to see me in black clothing, because everybody was wearing black under the Khmer Rouge. And I asked him, are we in Cambodia or Thailand? He said, we are in Thailand. And I said, why are we speaking Cambodian? And he said, because I was Cambodian. I was born in Cambodia, but I've been living here for the past 7, 8 years. So that's how I know that I already was in Thailand.
Wow. So how do you get to Connecticut? How do you get to meet Vice President George Bush? I mean, that's so unlikely. I mean, here's a guy that you escaped by the skin of your teeth. You're making it to Thailand. You're not even sure you're in the right country, but finally you find out that you escaped from Cambodia and you're in Thailand. But how do you make it from Thailand to the United States? And with $2 in your pocket, somehow or another you become friendly with George Bush. Tell us how that happens.
You may not believe this, but I was dreaming to be a truck driver because when I arrived in Connecticut, I arrived in New Haven.
Yeah.
And I had $15 in my pocket, and the taxi driver came to me and said, do you need a taxi? I said, no, I want to go to the bus station for buses that going to Wallingford. He said that the buses stop running at 5 o'clock. The only way to get to Wallingford is to take my taxi. And I asked him, how much does it cost? He said $13. So that left me $2 when I get to Wallingford. So when I was in a taxi from New Haven to Wallingford, I saw these 18-wheelers, huge, big to me. And I said,
trucks, right?
Goodness, they're going, what are they carrying? And I would like to be a truck driver. And that was my dream. So as we say, God, we all make plans, but God determines our steps.
Yeah.
So I made plan to be a truck driver, but God said you should go to the White House. All right. That's how I got to meet you and George H.W. Bush. But it's all in God's hand.
Yeah. When's the first time you met George H.W. Bush?
I didn't meet him until I was invited by President Reagan to the White House on July 13, 1988. There was a ceremony in the Rose Garden, and President Reagan invited me to be a dice guest in an event to honor the countries that fell to communist rules. We call that Captive Nations Week. We had that, and President Reagan had that for a number of years, and then after the Cold War ended, we stopped having that. So that's how I met George Bush for the first time in 1988, July 13. And when I was standing there in the Rose Garden with the President and Vice President of the United States, the thought never crossed my mind that I would be working for George Bush in a few months, and that he would become the most influential person in my life.
Yeah. How did he become the most influential person in your life? I mean, of course, we both started at the White House together, and
that's right.
And that was, I know it was exciting for me because people don't realize this, that when you start at the White House, I mean, there's a lot that nobody really knows, how the thing's going to, like what office you're going to have, and
right.
What's here and what's there, and how you do this and how you do that. What do you do when letters come in, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that you just don't know, and we all didn't know it together, except for there were some people that had worked for President Reagan who started with us, and they knew a little bit about the process and how things work.
That's right.
But
the only thing I knew was the policies and positions that George Bush had during the campaign. And of all the people who were with us at the White House, Joe, I mean, literally, I traveled the longest all the way from Cambodia to the White House. But we all learned very quickly, and as you remember, we had to do everything. Everything had to be perfect because the ramification of any small mistake or any error. So we learned that very fast, and he became the most influential person in my life because there are only three persons who are in that position. My mother gave me life. Martha, my wife, whom you know very well, she gave me love. And George Bush taught me about life, love, and leadership. and how to be a complete person, how to be a complete person. He said, you remember, any definition of a successful life must include service to others. And that sort of stay with me until now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you got to work for President Bush in the Office of Public Liaison as a Deputy Assistant to the President, which is a very, very senior position in the White House. And then under his son, George W. Bush, you continued your service to the country by becoming, you were named by President George W. Bush to be an ambassador to the United Nations. And you served in that position for a number of years, I know, for President George W. Bush. So talk about service to country. But this is in your heart. You always had a servant's heart, which I loved about you. I can't think of too many more people at the White House that were consistently so humble and hardworking and sincere as you were and continue to be, Sichan. You just an amazing human being. And nobody would have known your story. I did. I knew it because we had talked about it. This is before you wrote your book, The Golden Bones, which I have a copy. I hope everybody buys this book. This is a great book. It just tells the story in detail so you can see the story of this amazing man, this amazing American man who was born in Cambodia. But you were one of the few people that was just so humble and so dedicated to the president and so dedicated to the mission, of serving others, of serving the country. I mean, you were a tremendous example for me. I worked under you. You demanded excellence, of course, and I was glad to try to make sure that we provided it for people. But service to others. So what he said something about the most important thing in life is life doesn't have meaning unless you're serving other people.
That's true. I agree with that assessment, and what he said at the White House. Any definition of a successful life must include service to others. Immediately, I decided to join the Civil Air Patrol, which is a branch of the U.S. Air Force. It's a volunteer organization, but we were involved in search and rescue operation and cadet program in airspace education. But the Civil Air Patrol was founded in 1941 on December 1st, just 1 week before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And I been training with them all along, and here I also continue to serve, and the mission expanded a little bit to include natural disaster relief, border protection, to include all kind of responses, and I really enjoy doing that because it's an expression of what America is all about. We all volunteer our time, our talent, our treasure to make lives better for our community, our society, and humanity. And that's something that I enjoy very much. And on that note, Joe, last month I went to Connecticut to fly a plane that flew over Ground Zero on 9/12, the day after the terrorist attack. You may remember, I think all of us remember where we were on 9/11. There were some 4,500 planes in the skies of the United States. All of them were ordered to land within a few hours, except one plane. It's a Cessna 172 that belonged to the Civil Air Patrol. It was sent to fly over Ground Zero the day after to take high-resolution photos of Ground Zero for FEMA and the White House. And that plane was in Connecticut until March. And I was privileged to go there and fly the last mission of that plane before it was taken over to Dayton, Ohio, to the National U.S. Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. So it was a privilege for me to be able to do that. And I dedicate that flight to our former boss, George H.W. Bush, who was a pilot, as you know.
Yes.
And this year, in addition to his centennial, we also celebrate the 80th anniversary of his being shot down on September 2nd in Chichijima. So I dedicate that flight to George H.W. Bush, and I carried a few things with me on that flight, and I have something for you. When I see you, I'll give to you.
I can't wait. Well, my friend Ambassador Siv has written about his life in this beautiful book, Golden Bones, a phrase that means lucky in Khmer. But I think the journey from a war zone to a refugee camp to addressing the United Nations General Assembly, imagine that, has something to do with a lot more than luck. We'll let our guest catch his breath for a few seconds and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
In his book, Ambassador Sichan Siv describes his early life as a paradise. But when the Khmer Rouge arrived, paradise descended into a living hell, a hell that took his family and forced him to flee his home and start a new life in America. But decades later, as an official representative of the President of the United States, he goes back to Cambodia, to the very place where his mother lost her life. Sichan, first, what are your recollections about that journey back? And then secondly, the more important question is, how do you forgive people? How do you forgive the people who killed your whole family, who slaughtered your mother and all your family members? How do you forgive them?
That's a very good question. As you remember, I left Cambodia in 1976 under very unusual circumstances, so to speak. You know, I ran through the jungle for 3 days, having nothing to eat or to drink. And then in 1992, when we were all in the White House, I was invited by the State Department to go back because we just finished a peace agreement in Paris to find a lasting peace for Cambodia. So we went back, and it was quite an emotional return because in 76 I left through the jungle. In 1992 I returned as an official of the U.S. government in the U.S. government plane as the White House staff under President George H.W. Bush. Whatever I saw when I was growing up there was completely different. And the emotion was quite strong, especially when I was taken to the rice fields where my mother and my whole family were killed. You asked about forgiveness. I have thought all along from the time I came to Connecticut that I am going to forget the past because it's so painful, and I just focus on the future. And I just did everything that came my way to the best of my ability. And as fate would have it, God plans dictated, I end up at the White House. So forgiveness is important, but you should not forget, because if you forget the past, you don't know what's going to help in the future. And that's something I learned, because otherwise you are dragged down in the negative feelings. This person killed my neighbor, killed my friend, killed my brother, my sister, and so you never get out of that darkness, the dark chapter of your life. And I have to tell you, Joe, because you know Martha very well, I've seen a lot of tragedies in my life, but losing Martha was the worst. And she was the rock, the shield, and the fortress, and everything to me, and simply the best. But grief, unfortunately, all of us will have to face each stage of our life, and each of us will have to do that. And the best way to get out of grief is to go through it. It's sort of a contradiction in terms, you know. You want to get out of it, you go through it. So just do whatever that can bring you some sense of positiveness, something that you are able to help. Every day when I get up, I think of 5 people that I would make smile. That's my good day, you know. If I can bring a smile to 5 people, the mailman, the yard worker, the grocery checkout counter, everybody at the gas station, if I can bring smile to 5 people, I think that's a good day for me. Yeah. So, and I look, you smile, so I'll make you happy already, and I'm happy.
You brought a smile to my face, my friend. Well,
thank you.
Your story inspired me from the first day we met. I know everyone who had the privilege of working alongside of you in the State Department and the White House feels the same way. God has been so good to you, and I'm so thankful for you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
We'll be right back with closing thoughts with our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
You're watching Joe Watkins' State of Independence on Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Share your comments about today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org.
So now let's talk to our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
Well, that is a page-turner of a life. And I was thinking when he was talking about falling into these snares in the jungle, Pilgrim's Progress comes to mind, that God kind of tees up this journey for you, but does not let you know the tragedies and the hardships. And you don't even know that you're in hardship sometimes. He wakes up and realizes that he's been cut up from the booby trap. And I think the beauty of how God kind of withholds the future from us, not knowing till 5 years later that your mother is gone. So allows you to assimilate to a new life in the United States. And then what skill sets do you need?
Remember he said his dream was to be a truck driver.
To be a truck driver.
Yeah.
But to know that the ultimate plan for him was far different. But then at this stage of life, being able to look back at a career and say, my aim in life is to serve the person in front of me and to make them smile and engage. That's not a throwaway. It's a deliberate way to live your life, to be able to say, I'm going to engage with the information I have today, not look too long over your shoulder, confront that reality. And I know a lot of our viewers are facing really high hurdles, and it feels like there isn't another day, or they're not going to be able to live another week, or they look to their left or right, and the person that they were depending on, for whatever reason, isn't there anymore. How do you go another day? And so to look at the ambassador's life and to be able to say, not only is there another day, but there's real meaning and purpose for how many ever days God gives you. It's an extraordinary way to live.
Yeah, well, the president tells him a life devoid of service is, you're supposed to serve.
Because it gets you out of yourself, right? It takes you away from looking at your circumstances to others.
Yeah. Well, he certainly.
I'm glad we met him.
Yeah, I am too. It's wonderful. Well, maybe you're comparing your life with Ambassador Siv, wondering, what am I doing with my life? But the comparison isn't the point. Seeing God guide a life through unspeakable tragedy and hardship, making beauty out of ashes, that's the point. That's just how God works, isn't it? Please let me know how this story, how Sichan's story especially, helped you with a note in the comment box at joewatkins.org. For Jeff Coleman and the entire team here at Lighthouse TV, thanks for being with us tonight. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks so much for watching. God willing, I'll see you next week. Remember what he said about if I can make 5 people smile, that's a good day. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Which is saying that the person at the checkout counter is significant. The person who is mowing and working in the lawns has significance. And I don't know how else you find.
Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.